program. Hi, everyone. Welcome to RBCM at Home. My name is Kim Goff, and I'm a learning program developer at the Royal BC Museum. I'm coming to you today from my office at the museum, which is located on the territories of the Songhees and the Esquimalt First Nations, the Lekwungen-speaking people in Victoria, British Columbia. During this pandemic period, it has felt at times that everything is upside down, but we do our best to cobble together some semblance of normal and try to lean into the familiar. One familiar tradition for many people over the summer months is to go on vacation. So for RBCM at Home in the months of July and August, we will be traveling virtually, visiting museums and cultural organizations across the province, going on a road trip together, so buckle up. My colleague Chris O'Connor took the wheel while I was on a vacation, and he guided us to our first 3 stops. We started in the Caribou Mountains of BC's central interior with a visit to Barkerville Historic Town and Park. From there, we headed southwest to the place where mountains, rivers, and people meet in Whistler at the Squamish-Lillooet Cultural Center. Our 3rd stop was in the southern interior near Castlegar at the Doukhobor Discovery Center. And last week, we went to Burnaby and the Nikai National Museum and Cultural Center. We've had lovely hospitality at all of these sites. And today, we're taking a short drive from Burnaby to Vancouver, where our destination is the Jewish Museum and Archives of British Columbia. Our host today is Michael Schwartz. He is the Director of Community Engagement at the Jewish Museum and Archives for the past 7 years today. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Kim. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to see you too. I've seen you present before at different conferences through the British Columbia Museums Association, but I think I had my first real chat with you last year when we were up in Prince George, again for the BC Museums Association conference, and that's when I first learned a little bit more about the Jewish Museum and Archives. So tell others, the folks watching today, about the Jewish Museum and Archives of BC.
Sure. So the Jewish Museum and Archives of BC has our offices based here in Vancouver. We have the archives down in Richmond, a dedicated facility there. The organization is celebrating its 50th anniversary next year, which is a very exciting time for us. The organization has grown from being a small volunteer-run organization over the past 5 decades to becoming a full professional run organization. We have a small team of 3, myself, the Director of Community Engagement, our archivist, Alyssa Rutenberg, and our administrator, Marcy Babbins, as well as a volunteer board of roughly 12 people, community members who support our work and help us to do everything we need to do. The collection at the archives is truly the heart and soul of the organization, and has been built up over the past 5 decades to be rather substantial. We have 325,000 photographs. We have 325 linear meters of textual data, textual materials. So the linear meters is the standard measurement for archives. And if you can imagine a slice of paper, a piece of paper being very thin, if you put many different pieces of paper side by side, you start to eventually get to a centimeter, and then a meter, and then hundreds of meters. So if you can imagine the shelves that fills up, it's a very substantial space. In addition, we also have 900 oral history interviews. So we've been doing interviews with community members since the 1960s, which was fairly avant-garde for the time, a very interesting, important, innovative way of collecting community memories. And that work has continued uninterrupted up until the current moment. So interviews are always underway and new interviews are being added to the collection. So all of that material, the photos, the documents, and the interviews form the basis for all of our public programming. So we have walking tours, we have exhibits, we do temporary exhibits in various places around the city, around the province, as well as we have, I believe it's 12 now, online exhibits that are available through our website. I can get into that in greater detail, but that's a pretty thorough summary of the things that we do.
Right. So you mentioned exhibits, and they're mostly at other sites, you were saying, or online. But if people wanted to access your site or the resources that you mentioned, the oral histories or some of the archival pieces, are you currently open? Or if not, how do people find that?
Yeah, so the JMABC, the Jewish Museum and Archives of BC, has continued operation throughout the pandemic. However, we've been working remotely. As you can see, this is my home. All of our team has been working remotely since March, and that really hasn't interfered with our work because all of our collection is available through our website, which is jewishmuseum.ca. For the past 5-6 years, we've been uploading all of our exhibits onto the website. So you can go to jewishmuseum.ca and click on the exhibit tab and be able to review any of the past exhibits that have been put together. There's exhibits about modern architecture, about community volunteer groups, the exhibit of a really remarkable photographer, Fred Schiffer, as well as history of the Jewish community in the early days of Victoria, et cetera, et cetera. So it's always very interesting area to browse through. You'll also find on our website material from the food programming that we ran in 2017, specifically the podcast, The Kitchen Stories, which was a major project documenting the important role that food plays in perpetuating community traditions and memory of migration and immigration from throughout the community. So many interviews with community members and food experts were collected for that program and edited down to 13 episodes on a variety of themes.
Oh, great. Is that podcast only on your website, or can people find that where they get their favorite podcasts?
They can find it where they get their favorite podcasts. Yeah. So it's on the Apple store, the podcast store. It's on SoundCloud. We haven't moved it up to Spotify yet, but that's on the list of things to do.
Yeah. So Michael, I mentioned that's on your list of things to do. You're the as a director of community engagement, that program was one of your initiatives. Do you have any favorite stories from that exhibition? Well, that program, because I think you it wasn't only a podcast. You had some on-site programs with that as well, did you?
Yeah. So we had a suite of food programs that ran for the whole course of the year that were all interconnected and were in different ways. I see that Chris has just posted the link to the Kitchen Stories podcast. The podcast was one piece of it. Another really important pillar of the program was the Chosen Food Supper Club, which was a series of 8 dinners that we held at our space in Vancouver. We have a full catering kitchen that we were able to make use of and had community members come and share their traditional family recipes. And a key part of that program was that each of the 8 events was representative of a different slice of the Jewish community. So the Jewish community is made up of people who've come to this part of the world over the past 150, almost 200 years from all different corners of the world. So there's folks who came from Eastern Europe around the turn of the century. There's folks who came from Hungary, from South Africa, families that settled into South America or major cities of with major Jewish populations like New York and Montreal, and only much later, generations later, came to Vancouver. So there's families that came from North Africa, places like Morocco, as well as from Israel. So over the years, the community has really come to be a very diverse mix of folks who've come from all corners. And one of the ways of talking about that, about learning about that, that's really approachable is to access it through food. So we had these dinners where different community members came and shared their recipes and mentored our guests in how to make these cuisines, how to make the food, and what historic symbolism or meaning was behind the dishes. So we had a Syrian Jewish dinner, we had a Hungarian Jewish dinner, we had Montreal smoked meat, a whole variety. And we even did a dumpling throwdown with our friends from the Hua Foundation, the Chinese Canadian community, over who has the most delicious dumplings. Friendly competition.
Great. Yeah, I think dumplings are one of those cuisines that we find in many different cultures.
Absolutely.
Oh, but it's lunchtime and you're making me really hungry here. That's such a great program, and I'm glad that's been archived in a way in terms of the podcast. It does make me think, for folks watching us on Zoom and on Facebook, if you have a favorite recipe, a Jewish recipe, maybe you can share a link to it in the chat window. We can keep that going a little bit. Yeah. I know another way that you connect with community and share history is through community walking tours. Can you tell us a bit about those?
Absolutely. So the community walking tours have been happening, I think, for about 20 years, longer than I've been involved. So a good long time. And over the years, we've added to the collection, to the number of tours that are offered, and refined the tours. One of the very interesting things I find that happens when we lead a tour is that almost every time there's somebody on the tour who has a memory, who grew up in the area, or their grandfather, their uncle, their aunt, there's somebody in the family used to tell them a story about the history of the community in that neighborhood, and will share it with us. So that material then becomes part of the script. It's an ever-evolving thing. We offer tours in a number of different areas of the city. Strathcona, which is, for those of us not in Vancouver, Strathcona is east of Main Street and just north of Hastings, or south of Hastings, excuse me. That's the oldest residential area of the city, one of the oldest areas, and was the working class immigrant neighborhood traditionally for many,
and
many decades.
When you mention the oldest area of the Vancouver neighborhood in Vancouver, what time period are we talking about?
Yeah, so the I should specify and say, one of the oldest settler communities
Right.
in the mid-late 19th century. So when Gastown was being built up, becoming the commercial hub of the city, Strathcona is just a 10-15 minute walk away, and was where many working class communities settled. To the further west was the West End, was a more upper crust neighborhood. And surrounding Strathcona, or kind of encompassing it, we have the ethnic communities of Chinatown, Porugai, the Japanese town. Little Italy pops up a little further east. Ukrainian communities, etc. So all these different communities are kind of commingling. So we do a walking tour, to get back to the original question, we do a walking tour of the Jewish history in that neighborhood. It's home to the oldest synagogue in the city. So that's a highlight, as well as the homes of a number of different early leaders of the community, businesses, and community organizations that were born of that area. So one tour route is Strathcona. One tour route is Oak Ridge, the neighborhood that became the hub of the community in the post-war era. From about the 50s to the 70s was a real heart of the Jewish community. We have a tour of Mountain View Cemetery, which is at Fraser and 37th. There's a Jewish section there that has 400 graves, community members buried there, beginning in the late 19th century and into the early 20th century. The area fell into disrepair a few decades back, and then in 2013 through 2015, there was a major rehabilitation project that helped to that really rehabilitated the area, made it much more beautiful, redid the pathways and the landscaping, and was able to derive from the archives a great deal of information about who those people were and fill in a lot of gaps in our understanding that had just kind of faded with time. So that was really exciting to learn those stories, and now we can share them through our walking tours. We also do a tour of Gastown and a tour of the BC Archives, the BC Jewish Community Archives that we manage. So the tours were on hiatus for a while during COVID, but the tours of the cemetery, Mountain View Cemetery, and Strathcona neighborhood are now back on track, and they're being offered roughly once a month. So there's a couple of tours that just happened over the past few weeks, and there's more coming up later this month and into the early fall.
And do folks need to sign up for those in advance?
Yes, please. Tours are $10 per person, and we like to know who's coming so that we can anticipate the crowd. And folks can register through our website, jewishmuseum.ca, and that'll give you a link to Eventbrite to book your ticket and pay online so that we don't have to exchange cash on the day of.
Nice. Well, I love that you said that community tours kind of grow and change depending on the stories that you're told and what gets shared from the community members while you're on your tours. And I noticed on your website you have another program right now, which is a community collection program, looking at, I think, people's experiences during COVID-19. What are you hoping to document with this program?
Thanks for bringing attention to that. The COVID Community Memories Project is really our way of responding to this moment. I think it's inarguable that we are living through a historic moment, something that none of us have experienced unless we're over 100 years old, and ideally something that we hopefully won't experience again. But it's definitely something strange and remarkable and, history worthy. So it's very important that we get a record of what is happening and how is it being felt as individuals. So we've put out a call. We put out a call within the first week or two of COVID quarantining, social distancing, all of this stuff being enacted. And it's meant to be an ongoing record of what this experience has been like for people here in BC. I know that many different organizations and Archives of Vancouver, the Museum of Vancouver, doing similar projects to collect. And we feel that it's our part to collect the history, the experience of our particular community through this time. So the kinds of things we're looking for is really a very wide definition. Photographs, diary entries, if kids are doing art projects, collages, responding to the work, to the situation, questions like, how are you adapting to working from home? How are you dealing with having to educate your children, distance learning, school from home? What are people doing to alleviate the stress? Are they, going outside exercising? Are they diving into escapist fiction? All of these things are interesting questions, and I think that are questions that historians and scholars of all different disciplines, looking back on this moment once we have come out of it, it'll be important learning for many disciplines to look at and understand how does a community, how does a society cope with a time of crisis like this.
I think that's, such an important piece, that it is about those many voices. I think often we think, oh, no one's really interested in my personal experience, or you probably want to hear from somebody who's more famous, or a captain of industry, or a leader in the community. But those personal experiences, those firsthand accounts can be so important. Can you imagine, Do you have some in the archives from previous events? Anything that's a favorite for you if you're planning a program or you're, thinking about your walking tour? What kinds of resources or voices sort of stand out for you?
Certainly, yeah. You've hit the nail on the head. Is that this is a problem that we run into frequently when we ask people for their stories, for their materials. We'll call someone up and say, we'd like to send someone to do an interview with you and get your story. And, fairly often someone will say, oh, no, you don't want to hear from me. No, what are you talking about? And I think that it is, the fact that we have 900 interviews in our collection is a testament to really demonstrates how wide a range the collection is and that we want it to be. We do want the stories of those captains of industry, of the politicians, certainly, but not exclusively. It's very important to also that the archives, that the historical record really reflects the full expanse of the community, and whether someone was a homemaker or a volunteer, whether they were rich or poor. That's all part of the bigger story about who we are as a community and who we have been. And only when we get all of that, a full range of the stories, then can we look back and start to write histories and say, have an understanding in the historical record about what were the different positions of the community, what were the different roles played by different people, and look at things like how the roles of women have changed dramatically over the past few decades, right? If we don't have a record of the place of women in our community in, say, the 1950s and 60s, then it's very difficult to provide a comparison of the place of women in the 80s, 90s, and today. Historians have always dealt with this question about absence, the people whose voices aren't being heard. And they come up with, very thoughtful ways of approaching that and resolving that. But it's still working from a deficit of a lack, right? And if, there's no better way to understand than to just hear it from people's point of view, hear it from themselves. And so that's the work, that's something that we kind of keep in mind all the time is, who is not being heard and what can we do to ensure that they are today, tomorrow, and decades from now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So well said. I think hearing those voices and reading those narratives, if it's someone's diary or a letter, it reminds me of our humanity when I see those voices and those stories. And I realize that kid from 115 years ago had these similar feelings or experiences to what I did when I was a kid. And there's a connection there that can't really be replaced by statistics.
You asked for a couple of examples I should mention. Just two that come to mind is one of our earliest online exhibits is More Than Just Misses, which is available through our website, and is the story of women in the 1960s who were involved in three important volunteer organizations, Hadassah, Na'amat, and National Council of Jewish Women. So really carving out a very important position for women doing important social work, social justice, activism, etc. So had a lot of fun researching and putting that exhibit together. For me, it was a bit of a way to honor the memory of my grandmother, who was involved for many, many years in National Council, and all of her peers of that generation, ensuring that they are, permanently in the historical record. Another example is our exhibit, Letters Home, which is a collection of letters written by a young man, Private Joseph Seidelman, who was a student at UBC and went to fight in the First World War and wrote a series of letters back to his sister and his family here. So those are two exhibits that demonstrate the stories of the folks, a diverse range of the community.
Excellent. You've mentioned oral histories a few times. On your project right now, can people record a message or submit a recording? Or are you just sort of collecting names or ideas right now?
Both. Yeah. If people would like to leave an audio message or, record something, that's certainly welcome. That's great. Whether it's in writing or audio or different format. I mean, today it's very simple to do a video, whatever works for people. And that can also just be the tip of the iceberg. If they want to speak with someone, we're very happy to send a volunteer interviewer to speak with them. Or if they're not comfortable yet, then we can arrange a time to speak down the road when it seems safer to get together.
Oh,
so
excellent.
We're very flexible.
Excellent. Michael, a half hour has gone very quickly.
Wow.
Is there anything that you were hoping to mention that I didn't ask you about or you didn't get a chance to mention yet?
I mean, we could talk all day. There's so much to talk about. So I think I'll let it go. But I should just bring it back around to say that we're very, very excited to be celebrating our 50th anniversary next year. And so there's going to be a whole lot of wonderful programming starting in November of this year at our AGM, and then continuing through the spring, summer, and fall into next year. So keep your eyes peeled, sign up for our mailing list, check out our website, and you'll get to hear all about it.
Oh, that's excellent. That's great. I'm also wondering, you are the Jewish Museum and Archives of British Columbia. Are there other smaller community Jewish museum and archives that you work with, or that you folks may be familiar with or not familiar with?
Yeah, so there are Jewish groups, volunteer groups throughout, in different pockets of the province. There's a group of folks who we work with very closely who do walking tours of Victoria through another umbrella non-Jewish organization, but that do tours of Jewish Victoria. We're working with them to kind of co-promote one another's tours and build that up together. There are groups in some of the smaller towns up in for instance, there's communities in the interior and up in the Okanagan that are doing community groups. They're usually based around either a synagogue or a Jewish community center, and there's often one or two people who are very passionate about history and have taken it on to be their thing. Aside from that, we communicate regularly with the Montreal Jewish Museum, which does amazing work, as well as the Conference of American Jewish Museums is an umbrella agency that we're a part of, and our peers in San Francisco, Cincinnati, New York, all over the place, each doing their part to document the community history. Yeah.
Right. So if we've convinced someone today watching the recording later to submit some ideas or letters or stories about their COVID experience, you could look for your local museum or organization. You could look for the provincial museum, such as one we're talking about today with Michael, because it sounds like there's good communication and sharing between all of those sites.
Yeah.
Great.
Certainly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for joining us today and for sharing the good work of your organization, and happy 50th anniversary.
Pleasure. Thanks for inviting me to be part of this. I look forward to seeing the rest of the talks down the road.
Great. So if you joined us late or you missed something and want to go back to write down a name, this is being recorded, and you will find it on the Royal BC Museum's YouTube channel, so you can have a look for it there, as well as past episodes. The Royal BC Museum has reopened, and we are ready to welcome you back, and you can find out more on our website about time tickets and which exhibits are open. We will be continuing our at-home kids, and outside for the foreseeable future, and links for all of those programs are on our calendar. We are also collecting. We have a project as well. We're collecting perspectives, photos, videos, and mementos that will help tell the story of this moment for future generations. Right now, what we're collecting is information and experiences, so not objects themselves. And you can contribute by visiting our online submission form and tell us what you think should be captured for the future. In the meantime, everyone, take care of yourselves and take care of one another. And thank you for joining us.